All right, so let's jump into Bitcoin mining in 2025. It looks like things are getting pretty interesting. But the big question I have is, can Bitcoin mining really stand on its own? Or is it always going to be stuck, going up and down with the price of Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And these reports seem to suggest that things are changing. For years, mining stocks basically just followed whatever Bitcoin's price did. Bitcoin goes up, mining stocks go up even more, but that pattern seems to be breaking down.
Okay, so what makes you say that? What's the evidence here?
Well, if you look at the numbers, like the correlation figures, back in 2023, the correlation between Bitcoin's price and how mining stocks were doing was really strong, like 0.92 for the price and 0.34 for the return. But then in 2024, that connection gets much weaker. The price correlation drops to 0.71, which is still there, but the return correlation plummets to just 0.05. That's a huge difference.
So even if Bitcoin was having a good year in 2024, it sounds like the mining companies weren't necessarily following along. What happened? Did they all suddenly forget how to mine?
No, not quite. There are a couple of big things happening here. One is that spot Bitcoin ETFs arrived early in 2024. These ETFs basically gave large institutions a much more direct way to invest in Bitcoin. It's like, if you want to get somewhere, would you rather take a direct flight or a flight with like 3 layovers?
Right. Okay, so you're saying the ETF streamlined everything, so institutions didn't have to rely on mining stocks as like a roundabout way to get into Bitcoin.
Exactly. And that shift in demand had a big impact on how mining stocks performed. But there's more to the story. 2024 was also the year of the big Bitcoin halving event.
Right, the halving. That's when the reward for mining a block of Bitcoin gets cut in half, right? That sounds pretty rough for the miners.
Yeah, it was a tough year for them, no doubt. The halving happened in April, and the block reward went from 6.25 Bitcoin down to 3.125 Bitcoin. Now, everyone knew this was coming, but it happened at the same time that the difficulty of mining Bitcoin was at an all-time high, so there was more competition for those smaller rewards. And then to make things even worse, the transaction fees, which are another way miners make money, were also falling.
Wow, so it's like they're getting squeezed from every direction. Bitcoin might be doing well, but their actual income is taking a hit.
Exactly. It was a perfect storm. Even with Bitcoin rallying, the hash price, which basically measures how much revenue miners get for their computing power, crashed by a massive 75%.
So how'd they adapt to that? They didn't just give up and shut down their mining rigs, did they?
Well, they had to get creative.
Yeah.
And this is where we start to see some really interesting financial tools emerge, like Hashrate derivatives.
Hashrate derivatives. Now that sounds interesting.
Okay, so imagine you're a miner and you're worried about Bitcoin's price crashing. Hashrate derivatives basically let you lock in future revenue. You're essentially selling your future hash rate production at a price that's already agreed upon. It's like insurance for miners. It helps protect them from those crazy price swings and gives them some stability.
So instead of just riding the Bitcoin roller coaster, they're finding ways to kind of smooth things out and make their business more predictable.
Exactly. It's a sign that the industry is maturing and miners are becoming more sophisticated.
But we also talked about miners getting into the world of AI. That seems like a pretty big leap.
Yeah, it is, but it's actually a pretty fascinating development. It turns out that the infrastructure you need for Bitcoin mining, all that power and cooling, is actually a good fit for running AI applications as well.
Oh, so these miners are like tech multitaskers now. Mining Bitcoin on one hand, training AI models on the other.
Pretty much, and there are real companies doing this already, like Hive Digital Technologies, Hut 8, Core Scientific. They're all exploring this kind of hybrid model. They're securing AI contracts to bring in more stable revenue streams. It's a pretty bold move, but it could be a game changer for the whole industry.
Wow, so we've got ETFs shaking things up, the halving squeezing profits, and now this whole move towards hash rate derivatives and AI. Bitcoin mining in 2025 sounds like a completely different animal.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how all of these developments are changing the game financially for Bitcoin miners. It's not just about chasing Bitcoin's price anymore.
Right, it sounds like they're having to come up with more sophisticated strategies to manage risk and attract investors.
Exactly. Like, take those hash rate derivatives. They're not just a way to protect yourself. They're actually changing how people think about Bitcoin mining as an investment.
Yeah, it's like they're bringing some predictability to something that's always been super volatile. Kind of like moving from high-stakes poker to investing in something more stable like bonds.
That's a great analogy. And that move towards predictability can make a big difference when it comes to things like getting loans and attracting those big institutional investors.
Makes sense. But what about this whole move towards AI and high-performance computing? That can't be cheap, right? It seems like a pretty risky bet.
You're right. Setting up the infrastructure for AI is a big investment, much more so than just your typical Bitcoin mining equipment. It's not for the faint of heart.
So it's a gamble, but a calculated one. They're betting that the revenue they can get from AI in the long run will outweigh those upfront costs.
Exactly. They're looking beyond just Bitcoin diversifying their revenue streams. And some companies are already proving that this model can work. We mentioned Hive Digital Technologies earlier. They're a good example.
What are they doing specifically with AI? What kind of applications are we talking about?
Well, they're not just using their infrastructure for AI, they're also branching out into things like client computing. It's like they're becoming a one-stop shop for all kinds of high-performance computing needs.
So they're using their existing infrastructure and their expertise to tap into new markets. That's pretty smart.
It is, and it really highlights something important for investors. If you're thinking about investing in Bitcoin mining, you can't just look at the price of Bitcoin anymore. You need to dig deeper.
It's like those old school stock picking strategies are back, but with a crypto twist.
Exactly. You need to understand the company's operational efficiency, their diversification strategy, how they're using those Hashrate derivatives to hedge their bets. It's a whole new level of analysis.
So what does all this mean for the future of Bitcoin mining? Is it becoming a legitimate industry, or is it still kind of a speculative bubble?
That's the big question. I think we're seeing signs that it's maturing. Bitcoin mining is getting more sophisticated, more resilient, and more independent from the ups and downs of Bitcoin's price.
So for our listener, what's the key takeaway here? Why should they care about all of this, even if they're not a crypto expert?
I think the main thing is this. We're seeing how value is created and captured, changing in the digital age. Bitcoin mining is a perfect example of that.
It's like we're watching the Wild West of crypto become more civilized, with rules, regulations, and these really sophisticated financial instruments.
And this maturation is going to have ripple effects throughout the whole tech world.
We're already seeing it with the way AI and mining are starting to merge.
And then there's that potential for AI-powered cryptocurrencies. It could change how we think about money technology, even the very nature of computing.
It's a future full of possibilities. And it's a future that's being shaped right now by the decisions and innovations of companies, investors, and everyday people.
So to our listener, we say, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Don't be afraid to ask questions and explore new ideas.
Because the world of technology is constantly changing. And it's the people who embrace that change who are going to thrive.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one driving the next big innovation, whether it's in Bitcoin mining AI or something we haven't even thought of yet.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we have a simple message for you. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.